Everything you need to know about climate change in the Philippines. We examine how climate change is impacting the Philippines and what the country intends to do about it. Climate change is happening now. Evidences being seen support the fact that the change cannot simply be explained by natural variation. The most recent scientific assessments have confirmed that this warming of the climate system since the mid 20th century is most likely to be due to human activities, and thus is due to the observed increase in greenhouse gas concentrations from human activities such as the burning of fossil fuels and land use change. Current warming has increasingly posed quite considerable challenge to man in the environment and will continue to do so in the future. Presently, some autonomous adaptation is taking place, but we need to consider a more proactive adaptation planning in order to ensure sustainable development. According to a report issued in 2019 by the Institute for Economics and Peace, the Philippines is the country most vulnerable to climate change. Between 1958 and 2014, the Philippines experienced a 0.62 degrees Celsius increase in yearly average mean temperature, with the rate of change increasing over time. Climate change has resulted in an increase in the amount and intensity of rainfall with more rainy days observed in recent decades. In this video presentation, we'll give an overview of the Philippines climate and outline the ways in which climate change will affect the Philippines. We'll also cover government policy on climate change and suggest what the future may hold for the Philippines. So here's the impact on energy supplies. Climate change could impact the Philippines' energy supply, as well as increasing energy consumption due to increased demand for air conditioning. Hydropower production, which accounts for 20% of the country's energy supply, is threatened by climate change-related water scarcity. For example, drought reduced hydropower production by 20% in 2010 compared to the previous year. Other key energy infrastructure such as the Malampaya offshore natural gas field is at risk from stronger and more frequent storms. Effect on the natural environment. Wildfires are becoming more common due to drought conditions, believed to be exacerbated by climate change and El Nino. Between 2000 and 2006, these fires devastated large tracts of forest, totaling around 15,700 hectares. Furthermore, increased temperatures and humidity in these places had been linked to the spread of invasive plants and insects in natural ecosystem. Impact on health. Heavier rains and rising temperatures both help mosquitoes grow and survive. Those health risks from mosquito-borne disease including diarrhea, dengue, fever, and malaria are predicted to worsen. Although malaria rates have declined considerably in recent years, dengue epidemics still occur every 3 to 4 years, and diarrhea remained the fifth most common cause of death in 2010. So here are the action plan in resolving issues on climate change. What does it take to ensure that adaptation planning has a scientific basis? Firstly, we need to be able to investigate the potential consequences of anthropogenic or human-induced climate change. And to do this, a plausible future climate based on a reliable and accurate baseline or present climate must be constructed. This is what climate scientists call a climate change scenario. It is a projection of the response of the climate system to future emissions or concentrations of greenhouse gases and aerosols. It is simulated using climate models. Essentially, it describes possible future changes in climate variables, such as temperatures, rainfall, storminess, winds, and etc., based on baseline climate conditions. The Philippines Climate Change Policy. In order to adapt to and mitigate climate change, the Philippines passed the Climate Change Act in 2009, requiring local governments to develop a local climate change action plan or LCCEP. However, only 160 out of 1,070 LGUs had LCCEP in place of July 2016. The Climate Change Commission is the principal policy-making organization on climate change issues as established by the Philippines Climate Change Act. The CCC announced in April 2021 that as a part of its commitment to the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, it was revising its objective to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 75% by 2030, up from target of 70 set years before. Climate change policy must address the country's present reliance on fossil fuels to generate power and run machinery for transportation in manufacturing and champion and sustainable development in the Philippines. The Philippines continues to rely largely on thermal power generation, particularly gas-fired, oil-fired, and coal-fired plants. Hydroelectricity production in the country is subject to drought. Photovoltaic solar electricity generation may be a more suitable alternative. However, increased cloudiness caused by climate change may have an impact on this as well. Biomass from trees, municipal garbage, and crop residue is abundant in the country and is an important source of renewable energy. What does the future hold? Neither current nor planned policies are currently sufficient to meet the Philippines' emissions targets. Increased energy use from transportation and buildings will be the primary source of emissions increases. According to current forecast, greenhouse gas emissions will rise, which is incompatible with the Paris Agreement's targets. The result, as outlined above, would be a decrease in readily available food and water, an increase in natural disasters, and the degradation of the natural environment. So the Philippines' future is currently uncertain. The country faces grave challenges in the form of threats to its environment, industries, and the lives and livelihoods of its people. Both the Filipino government and governments abroad will need to coordinate their efforts to combat the climate crisis through the reduction of emissions and the promotion of renewable energy sources. The best we can do is to educate ourselves on how best to face these challenges. While it does seem at times that we can do little as individuals, if we are ourselves with knowledge of the science behind climate change and its effect on people and the environment, we can start to take steps toward positive change and influence others to do the same. And that will be all. Thank you.